Asian football has been on the rise for the past couple of decades, where we have seen numerous Asian nations have incredible performances at the World Cup. Who can forget about South Korea's 4th place finish in the 2002 World Cup, and most recently Japan's run at the 2022 World Cup? The Asian nations are producing some of the world's biggest footballing stars, from Heung-min Son to Kairi Matoma to Mehdi Taremi to Kim Min-jae, who are all stars for some of the biggest teams in Europe. In just a few weeks, we will see the 18th edition of the Asia Cup. This is Asia's equivalence to Europe's Euros, to South America's Copa America, or CONCACAF's Gold Cup. This year's host nation will be Qatar, who were just previously the hosts of the 2022 World Cup, because China fumbled the bag. But let's jump into these Asia Cup group stage predictions, and if this video gets about 75 likes, I'll do one for the knockout rounds as well. So let's get into these predictions. But before I forget, I will be doing watch-alongs for all of Iran's matches throughout the tournament, and possibly for bigger latter stage matches in the Asia Cup. So if this is something that you're interested in tuning into, I left the links to the watch-alongs for all of Iran's group stage matches in the description down below. Now for realsies, let's get into the predictions. In Group A, we have Qatar, China, Tajikistan, and Lebanon. This group is very favorable for Qatar, so I see them fairly comfortably getting out of this group, finishing in first place. And based off what we saw in the last Asia Cup, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some favorable calls for them in this tournament. They've obviously had their struggles the past couple of years, especially at the 2022 World Cup, and since that tournament, they really haven't been that good. They hired Carlos Queiroz, just recently fired Carlos Queiroz, and now their new head coach is Marquez Lopez, where compared to their two previous coaches in Sanchez and Queiroz, the pedigree isn't quite on point for Lopez, but he did coach domestically in Qatar, and since pretty much their whole team is domestic players, I don't think it makes a massive difference. But in regards to this group, I think they'll be totally fine. It's more going to be the dogfight for second place between Tajikistan, Lebanon, and China. And honestly, China are probably the odd men out in this group. I mean, they're probably one of the worst Asian nations in this tournament, so they're probably comfortably my 4th place team in this group. And when it comes to Tajikistan and Lebanon, I think Lebanon has that just a little bit more of an X factor, especially when watching them in qualifiers. I know they haven't quite had as great of a run so far as they wanted, but when they do, when they do step it up in the more important matches, I definitely think they have the quality compared to Tajikistan. But it is pretty much totally up for grabs in second place. But for me, I'm gonna go with Lebanon. I do like some of their more offensive options, that creativity that they do have, and then when they do need to bunker down, they aren't bad at that either. Moving on to Group B, we have Australia, Uzbekistan, Syria, and India. I know on paper it doesn't look that exciting, but for, people that know Asian ball, this group is actually quite interesting. Australia and Uzbekistan on paper are the clear favorites, but Syria have been a national team that have caused quite decent trouble for some of the bigger nations in Asia. And on top of that, India obviously aren't one of the powerhouses when it comes to Asian football, obviously one of the biggest nations in Asia, but they are a little bit on the rise. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they have kind of one impressive match throughout the group stage. I do still think they will finish in 4th. I think Syria's gonna put Uzbekistan a little bit on the sword for second place, but I still think Uzbekistan will decently comfortably finish in second place, with Syria in 3rd, and then Australia will probably finish in 1st place. I did originally think that Uzbekistan could have an upset in this group and finish in 1st place above Australia, but with the breaking news of Shomurodov being ruled out of this tournament, I think it's going to be a big blow for Uzbekistan. But on the flip side for Australia, Lecky as well has been ruled out of this tournament. I do think it's going to hurt Australia a little bit, but not as much as Uzbekistan missing Shomurodov. Moving on to Group C, we have Iran, UAE, Hong Kong, and Palestine. When it comes to Iran, I mean, they couldn't have gone an easier group. This should be a cakewalk for Iran. We've already seen kind of a mini preview in World Cup qualification, as Hong Kong and Iran are in the same World Cup qualification group, and in the match in Iran didn't necessarily play spectacularly well, but they didn't play bad. They played decent. They got a 4-0 win. UAE, on the other hand, is the nation that I think Iran needs to worry the most about, because they're kind of a banana skin nation when it comes to the Asian countries. They're an Asian nation that has improved a lot. I think with how much Iran have kind of struggled under Amir Ghalanoui, they have won, they haven't lost under him, but the results and the performances have just kind of been mid for the most part. I think the match against UAE will be the toughest one, and I think UAE will be the other nation to get out of the group. They will finish in 2nd place. Hong Kong will probably finish in 3rd, and obviously with what's going on in Palestine, I just can't see nothing more than a 4th place finish for that nation. Next up is Group D with Japan, Indonesia, Iraq, and Vietnam. If I were to say, this is probably the group of death. Obviously, Japan being the clear favorites to finish in first, and obviously being the favorites to win this whole tournament, as they are heads and toes the best nation in Asia. So I think this will be a cakewalk for them. I wouldn't maybe be surprised if they have like a small hiccup with like a draw in one of these matches, and my guess would maybe be against Iraq, but nonetheless, they'll comfortably finish in first. But the real dogfight is for 2nd place, because I think Iraq, Indonesia, and Vietnam are actually on quite level playing fields. Iraq are a nation that won the Asia Cup back in 2006, so they do have that winning experience. I mean, granted, none of the players that have played on the team since 2006 are still currently playing, but, you know, they know what it's like to win this tournament. So I'm gonna go with them to finish in 2nd place, with Indonesia to finish in 3rd, a little bit of a surprise, and Vietnam to finish in last. I know they have kind of made good strides similar with India, but they are coming in with one of the youngest squads in the tournament, and I do think the future is bright for this nation. I think the 2027 Asia Cup will be their time to shine. Next up is Group E with South Korea, Malaysia, Jordan, and Bahrain. All right, when it comes to talking about this group, I want to show some particular love to South Korea. I think South Korea might be slept on when it comes to like the entirety of winning the Asia Cup. I know Japan has more of a complete team, but compared to South Korea, who don't have as of a complete team, but they have ballers, like world-beating footballing stars on their team that could kill Japan, versus, yes, Japan have more of a well-rounded team, but any of these big players for South Korea could just change a game, a match, regardless on who they play. Obviously, the big superstar is Heung-min Son, but Lee Kang-in has just been a house on fire, a smash hit at PSG. I mean, this guy, probably when people thought they signed him, oh, he's just there to sell jerseys and whatnot, the guy has been doing bits in Ligue 1. I mean, he's a star for one of the best teams in the world. Can't forget about probably the best defender of like all of the Asian nations, and Kim Min-jae, who has just been a rock for Bayern Munich defensively. This team just has those star presences that I think just could maybe be their year to win the Asia Cup. And I'm gonna say it now, I think South Korea is winning this year's Asia Cup. I know this is gonna be my hot take of the video. I'm gonna go with South Korea. So I'm gonna go with them in first place. I'm gonna go then with Jordan as my 2nd place finishers. I think Jordan has had some really good performances, especially I got to watch them closely in the Jordan International Tournament. I think they played pretty well when they faced off against Iran. And compared to Bahrain and Malaysia, I definitely think they have a lot better quality in this group. So I'll go with them in 2nd place, Bahrain in 3rd, and Malaysia in last. And then finally for our last group, Group F, we have Saudi Arabia, Thailand, Kyrgyzstan, and Oman. Crazy to think that Saudi Arabia is the only national team that was able to defeat Argentina at the 2022 World Cup. Out of all the nations they faced off against, it was the big, mighty Saudi Arabia. Back then, they were obviously coached by Hervé Renard, who I have just the utmost high praise for that guy. I mean, I would have loved for him to come to the Iranian national team, but they've just upgraded to Roberto Mancini. They give no fucks. Yes, they had a top-class manager back then. They're going to have even more of a top-class manager now. So it's going to be interesting to see, can Saudi Arabia put up a good run at this Asia Cup? I mean, they've invested very heavily in their league. They've invested very heavily in their coaching when it comes to the national team. I think we're going to see some big things come from Saudi Arabia in this next decade when it comes to them as a footballing nation. There will be some bumps in the road with Roberto Mancini because he probably doesn't know Asian football that well, but with a coach like him, their ceiling is just so much higher now. So I'm going to go with them in first place. The next up is going to be another banana skin nation, in my opinion, similar to UAE. I'm going to go with Oman. They were really close to qualifying for the 2022 World Cup. They put Japan, they put Australia to the sword in qualification. They are another nation. Maybe I want to put them in the same bracket as Uzbekistan that could be dark horses at this tournament. So I'm going to go with them in second place. Then I'll go with Kyrgyzstan in third and Thailand in fourth. So boys and girls, that's going to be the end of today's video. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What predictions of mine do you agree with, disagree with? Let me know your guys' thoughts. Who do you guys think will be the dark horses at this year's Asia Cup? Who do you guys think will win this year's Asia Cup? Don't forget to tune in for all the watch-alongs that I'll be doing for this tournament. It's going to be loads of fun, lots of watch-alongs, especially for the Iranian national team. So don't miss out on that. Make sure you're subscribed, and I hope you'll have a lovely day.